What if I told you that every single time you've ever failed at something like a diet you totally abandoned, or a relationship that just crashed and burned,
Right.
or, a financial goal you never quite reached? What if you were actually flawlessly executing a winning strategy? Like, what if the things that make you the most miserable are actually these these sophisticated victories engineered by your own brain?
It really completely flips the script on how we view failure, doesn't it?
It totally does.
I mean, it suggests that you aren't broken and, you aren't unlucky. You're just incredibly effective at playing a game you don't even realize you're playing.
Wow, yeah. Welcome to the Book Nook. If you're joining us for the first time, this is the channel and community where we take a deep dive into the most impactful, transformative books in self-help, spirituality, and, personal growth.
And we really try to extract the vital nuggets of insight
Mhm.
to shortcut your path to being genuinely well-informed.
Exactly. And today's deep dive is, well, it's for anyone who feels like a hamster on a wheel. Just furiously churning your way through life, burning massive amounts of energy, but somehow going absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, caught in that exhausting loop of just constant internal chatter.
Right, the self-judgment. So to tackle this, we are exploring a book that acts as like a giant blinding spotlight in the murky landscape of the human mind. It's called Unfuck Yourself, Get Out of Your Head and Into Your Life by Gary John Bishop.
And we should probably warn everyone right out of the gate.
Oh, definitely.
This is not a book that's going to, hold your hand, dim the lights, and tell you everything is perfectly fine exactly the way it is.
No, not at all. Bishop brings this radically different flavor to the personal development space. He's
Yeah.
this Scottish-born author, and what makes his perspective so fascinating is his background, right? He spent years rigorously training in ontology and phenomenology.
Right, which, okay, let's establish some groundwork right there.
Please do, because those are heavy academic words that usually make people's eyes just totally glaze over.
They do, yeah. But they're crucial to understanding why his method actually works. So, ontology is, in its simplest form, the philosophical study of being. It asks, like, what does it actually mean to exist?
Okay.
It looks at reality not as a collection of fixed objects, but as a state of being. And then phenomenology is the study of conscious experience, but from the first-person perspective.
So it's not about what's objectively happening in the room.
Exactly. It's about how you subjectively experience what is happening.
So it's kind of like instead of looking at human psychology like a mechanic looking at a car engine trying to find the broken part, it's more about examining the actual lens through which you're viewing the entire road.
Precisely. And Bishop has taken these incredibly dense, historically impenetrable academic philosophies and distilled them into something he calls urban philosophy.
Your urban philosophy, I love that term so much.
It fits perfectly. It's this no-frills, tough-love blend of modern neuroscience, ancient stoicism, and ontological inquiry. But it's designed for people who are dealing with, like, bad bosses, credit card debt, and, everyday relationship drama.
Yeah, Bishop actually calls this deep dive a conversational slap from the universe, and I am so enthusiastic about this completely BS-free approach because, listen, we aren't going to be talking about magical positive thinking today.
No manifesting checks in the mail today.
Right, we're not doing that. We are going to be talking about actionable cognitive restructuring. We're going to unpack the actual physical, neurological architecture of how you relate to your own mind.
And dissect the psychological why behind his methods. Because we don't just want to tell you what to do, we want to explain the biological mechanisms that make these strategies actually work.
So let's jump right into the deep end. Bishop starts with a baseline reality check about the human brain. And the reality is, it is incredibly loud in there.
Very lag.
Like, we exist in a constant state of internal noise.
Yeah. Neurological studies and psychological estimates suggest that the average human being experiences upward of 50,000 thoughts a day.
50,000. I mean, if you break that down, that is thousands of thoughts every single waking hour. It's just a relentless river of internal monologue.
And it operates largely through what neuroscientists call the default mode network.
The DMN, right.
So when your brain isn't actively engaged in a complex, focused task like, say, doing a math problem or navigating a new city, it defaults to this network. And what does the default mode network do? It ruminates.
It just spins.
It thinks about the past, worries about the future, it judges the present, and it constantly evaluates your social standing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Bishop affectionately and maybe painfully accurately calls this internal narrative a freak show.
It really is a freak show because we talk to ourselves all day long while we're working, eating, walking the dog. I mean, even when we're actively engaged in a conversation with someone else, there is a secondary conversation happening in the privacy of our own heads.
Absolutely. You're judging what they're saying. You're worrying about what you're going to say next.
You're noticing a stain on their shirt, you
Yeah.
know? And the crucial realization Bishop points out is that we have almost zero control over the automatic generation of those thoughts. They just pop up, totally uninvited.
And that is a vital point for you to internalize. You cannot stop the thoughts from arriving.
Yeah.
But, and this is the fulcrum upon which his entire philosophy rests,
Yeah.
we have a massive, absolute say in which of those thoughts we attach significance to.
Right.
And more importantly, the language we use to process them.
Yes. I really looked closely at their University of Alabama study by Professor Will Hart that Bishop brings up because it perfectly illustrates this. And what blew my mind wasn't just the result of the study, but the incredibly subtle grammatical trick they use to alter people's physical reality.
The Will Hart study it's a masterpiece of psychological research. Walk us through the mechanics of it.
So Hart's team took participants and had them recall or experience a series of events, right? Some were positive, some negative, and some completely neutral. Then they asked the participants to describe those events. But the trick was in how they were instructed to describe them. They played with the grammar.
The grammar, right?
Yeah. When participants described a neutral event using language that suggested it was ongoing, like an active, continuing process, using words ending in ing, they actually reported feeling more positive about the event.
But the inverse was also true, and this is where it gets incredibly dangerous.
Exactly. When they described a negative event in that same ongoing way, like saying, I am failing instead of I failed, they experienced a massive, measurable increase in negativity and stress.
Just from the verb tense?
Just by shifting the grammatical tense of how they talked about a memory, their emotional and physiological experience of that memory changed entirely.
So in simple terms, the grammatical structure of your internal dialogue dictates how you perceive and participate in your reality.
It's wild.
And this isn't just self-help rhetoric, you
Yeah.
know. It connects deeply to the philosophy of language. Think of Ludwig Wittgenstein, one of the most important philosophers of the 20th century.
Oh, great.
He famously said, "The harmony between thought and reality can be found in the grammar of the language." Wittgenstein believed that the limits of your language mean the limits of your world.
The grammar of the language, that is just staggering to think about. Our words aren't just a passive mirror reflecting our world. They are the active tools building it.
Yes.
It reminds me of the difference between like computer software and hardware. We tend to think of our self-talk as just software running on a screen easily deleted. But in reality, through neuroplasticity, the software is physically rebuilding the hardware.
That is a highly accurate analogy,
Yeah.
because every time you repeat a thought, you are firing a specific sequence of neurons. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections.
Okay.
There's a principle in neuroscience called Hebb's law, which states neurons that fire together wire together. So when you constantly use language like, I am overwhelmed, or this is impossible, you're firing that specific neural circuit.
And it gets stronger.
Exactly. Over time, the brain wraps those frequently used pathways in a fatty substance called myelin. And myelin acts like insulation on an electrical wire. It makes signal travel faster and more efficiently.
Wow. So by complaining, you are literally making your brain physically better and faster at being miserable. You're turning this little dirt road of anxiety into a 10-lane, high-speed neural superhighway.
Precisely. You are physically greasing the groove of your own despair.
Okay, let's unpack this. If our self-talk is this immensely powerful, physically altering force, why does Bishop take an absolute baseball bat to the whole just think positive industry? Because he absolutely hates traditional positive affirmations.
He does, and his reasoning is rooted in deep psychological mechanics. The traditional affirmation industry teaches you to, stand in front of a mirror and say things that are completely disconnected from your current reality.
I have to share his analogy here because it is so hilarious and vivid. He talks about how people will try to hype themselves up by saying things like, I am a tiger,
Yeah.
to unleash their inner animal.
Right.
And he points out that, first of all, you're obviously not a tiger. And secondly, standing there forcing yourself to repeat these empty platitudes feels like being, quote, force-fed a bucket of maple syrup liberally sprinkled with bits of last year's candy canes.
It's hilarious, but it really highlights the core issue, which is cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Cognitive dissonance is the mental discomfort you experience when you hold two or more contradictory beliefs. So if you stand in the mirror and tell yourself, I'm a wealthy millionaire, but your brain knows your bank account is overdrawn and your rent is late.
Your subconscious just completely rejects it.
Exactly. The brain calls your bluff. It creates conflict, not confidence. The brain recognizes the statement as a lie. It feels fake to you because it fundamentally is fake. You cannot outsmart your own subconscious with a sticky note on your bathroom mirror.
That makes so much sense. So if traditional affirmations are out, what is the alternative? How are we supposed to use this Wittgenstein neuroplastic power of language if we can't just forcefully lie to ourselves until things get better?
Well, Bishop introduces a critical distinction between what he calls narrative talk and assertive talk.
Yeah, okay, break that down.
Narrative talk is the default setting for the vast majority of human beings. It's that streaming dialogue of opinions, judgments, and most importantly, future casting. It's saying, I will be better at this, or I'm going to start going to the gym, or I should really organize my finances.
Oh, so that is the language of literally every failed New Year's resolution in history.
It really is, because narrative language lives entirely in the future. Neurologically, when you say, I will, you are subconsciously signaling to your brain that the action is happening later, not now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it removes all the urgency. It pacifies your immediate anxiety by making a promise about tomorrow, which
Aw.
completely drains the present moment of any power to act.
It's a procrastination tactic disguised as motivation.
That's a brilliant way to put it. Assertive language, on the other hand, intervenes right here, right in this exact second. It casts aside the default noise and stakes a definitive claim in the present tense.
Okay, so instead of saying, I will be relentless, which places the trait in some mystical future, the assertive phrase is, I am relentless. And instead of, I'm going to accept this bad news eventually, it's, I accept this.
Yes. Assertive statements like, I am, I embrace, or I accept are commanding. They don't require you to lie about being a millionaire. They require you to state a present condition of your character or your current action. They demand immediate psychological alignment.
Okay, but to use this assertive language effectively, the very first thing we have to assert is our readiness to actually step up and make a change, which transitions us perfectly into Bishop's first major paradigm shift in the book. If we want to change the neural hardware, we have to start with our threshold of willingness.
And this is where the tough love aspect of his urban philosophy really begins to bear its teeth.
Oh, it is brutal, but it's a necessary brutality.
Hmm.
Bishop drops this absolute truth bomb right into the reader's lap, he says. You have the life you are willing to put up with, period. If you aren't changing your circumstances, you are actively choosing them.
It's a profoundly bitter pill to swallow. Because human beings are incredibly defensive creatures. We naturally want to defend our circumstances. We want to list all the highly logical, seemingly undeniable reasons why we are stuck.
Right, the macroeconomic climate, our toxic boss.
Exactly. Our traumatic childhood, our genetic predispositions, our lack of free time.
Okay, but I have to push back here, though, because when I read that, my immediate instinct was to say, wait a minute, this sounds dangerously close to victim blaming.
I can see that.
Right. What about people stuck in systemic poverty? What about someone in a severely abusive situation or someone who gets laid off because their company went bankrupt? They didn't choose that. Are we really supposed to look at them and say, you just have the life you're willing to put up with?
That is a very valid and common critique. But Bishop is leaning heavily on Stoic philosophy here, specifically the teachings of Epictetus, to navigate this exact dilemma. Stoicism relies on the dichotomy of control. Epictetus famously said, circumstances don't make the man. They only reveal him to himself. Bishop is not arguing that you chose the bankruptcy or that you chose the abuse or the disease. Those are external variables beyond your control.
Okay, so where does the willingness part come in then?
The willingness comes in the response. Bishop's point is that while you didn't choose the catastrophic event, you are 100% responsible for what you do with your life in the aftermath of that event. Every single time. No exceptions.
I see.
By defending your current paralysis by saying, I can't succeed because my company laid me off, you are actually acting as a defense attorney for your own misery. You are building a rock-solid case for staying exactly where you are.
You are arguing for your own limitations, and if you win the argument, you get to keep them.
Exactly. He tells us to ruthlessly cut the buts out of our vocabulary. No more, I want to change careers, but I don't have the time. He says, those buts are excess baggage on a trip that requires you to travel extremely light. You have to stop blaming luck. Stop blaming your zip code.
Stop pointing to your parents.
Yes. And that brings us to his first personal assertion. I am willing.
I am willing. It sounds so simple, but it is a massive shift in posture. It's a state of readiness.
It is a doorway.
Mm.
The Renaissance philosopher Machiavelli noted that where the willingness is great, the difficulties cannot be great. When you generate a genuine internal state of willingness, you create an access point. You're no longer fighting the resistance, you're simply stepping through it.
I love how he reframes the concept of procrastination through this lens, too, because we usually view ourselves as fundamentally lazy or unmotivated when we put things off, right?
Pathologize it, yeah.
We do. We say, I'm just a lazy person. But Bishop says, no, you aren't lazy. You are simply unwilling. You're currently unwilling to do the uncomfortable work. And shifting that label from a permanent character flaw laziness to a temporary state of being unwillingness gives you all the power back.
Because you can't instantly cure a character flaw.
Right. But you can choose right now to become willing.
And what's equally fascinating is that Bishop explores the flip side of this coin. Sometimes declaring I am willing feels like too heavy of a lift. In those moments of deep resistance, declaring I am unwilling can be an even more powerful catalyst.
Yes, the power of being unwilling. I found this to be the most relatable part of the entire chapter.
It functions by creating an absolute boundary, like a line in the sand. Are you willing to live paycheck to paycheck, stressing about the grocery bill for the rest of your natural life?
No.
Right. When you really look at that bleak future, the visceral response is, no, I am unwilling. Are you willing to stay in a relationship that slowly drains the joy out of your soul every day? No, I am unwilling.
It's powerful.
It ignites a fierce, almost primal resolve. It's a fundamental refusal to tolerate the unacceptable for one more second.
It reminds me of a thermostat in a house. You know how if you set a thermostat to 70 degrees, it doesn't do anything until the temperature drops below that line? But the second it hits 69, the furnace kicks on with all this energy to heat the house back up. Our unwillingness is that lower limit. When we finally say, I am unwilling to drop below this standard of living, our internal furnace just kicks on.
That is a superb analogy. The declaration of unwillingness triggers the action.
And it scales down to small things, too, like cleaning out a hoarder's garage or doing a mountain of taxes. We look at the sheer volume of the task and we build it up in our minds until it feels like a trek across the Sahara Desert with no water. We think, I can't do this.
It's overwhelming.
But if you break it down into micro declarations like, I am unwilling to let this pile of receipts ruin my Sunday, so I'm willing to just sort them by month for 10 minutes, you shrink the monster.
You chart a path through the resistance by manipulating the threshold of your own tolerance.
Yeah.
But there is an elephant in the room here, a question that Bishop tackles with his signature bluntness.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
What if you look at your life? You see the things you constantly complain about, the extra 30 pounds, the soul-crushing debt, the dead-end job. And if you are truly honest with yourself, you realize that you actually aren't willing to do the excruciating work required to change them.
Right.
What if you are fundamentally unwilling to give up the comfort of junk food, or unwilling to sacrifice your weekends to build a side business?
His answer to this is so incredibly refreshing. He basically says, accept it. Stop bullshitting yourself and everyone around you. If you are unwilling to work 80 hours a week, take massive risks, and face constant rejection to become a millionaire, that is totally fine. There's no law saying you have to be a millionaire.
None at all.
But you must stop complaining that you aren't one. Face your reality. Own your unwillingness, because once you do, you drop the immense burden of guilt and resentment. You stop constantly comparing yourself to the people who are willing to make those sacrifices.
It forces absolute accountability. However, if we dig deeper into human psychology, we find a darker, more complex layer. If we are completely unwilling to change a miserable situation, but we continue to complain about it, obsess over it, and suffer through it day after day, there has to be a mechanism driving that behavior.
Right, there must be a reason.
We must be getting some sort of psychological payoff from staying stuck in the mud. And that brings us to what I consider the most mind-bending, paradigm-shattering concept in the entire book.
Oh, man. This is the part that completely rewired how I view my own life. Let's dive into the assertion, I am wired to win.
It is a radically counterintuitive idea that demands a lot of psychological flexibility from the reader. Bishop asserts that even when you think you are failing miserably at life, you are actually winning. You are always winning.
But listen, when you first read that, your brain violently rejects it. You think, Gary, you're a lunatic. I have thousands of dollars in credit card debt. I've been single for 5 years, and I hate my reflection in the mirror. In what universe am I winning?
To understand this, we have to look past the conscious mind and delve into the immense hidden power of the subconscious. Bishop references the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, a pioneering stem cell and DNA scientist.
Right, I remember this.
Dr. Lipton's research suggests that up to 95% of our cognitive activity, our decisions, emotions, actions, and behaviors, is controlled entirely by the subconscious mind.
Wait, 95%. So only 5% of the time are we actually the conscious captains steering the ship?
Exactly.
The rest of the time, we are essentially just passengers on our own cruise liner.
You are on autopilot for the vast majority of your existence, and your subconscious mind operates like a highly advanced pattern-matching machine. It has formed deep foundational beliefs about who you are, what you deserve, and how the world works.
Where do those come from?
These beliefs were usually programmed in early childhood through trauma, observation, or societal conditioning. And here is the crucial mechanism. Your brain cannot tolerate cognitive dissonance. It seeks absolute congruence. It demands that your external reality matches your internal subconscious map.
Which means your brain is constantly engineering your life to prove those hidden subconscious beliefs correct.
Yes, the reticular activating system, or RAS, in your brainstem acts like a bouncer at a nightclub. Millions of bits of sensory information hit you every second, but your conscious mind can only process a fraction of that. The RAS filters the information, and it only lets in the guests the data points that match the guest list written by your subconscious beliefs.
Okay, let me walk through Bishop's example of relationship sabotage because it illustrates this RAS filtering and this winning concept so perfectly.
Yep.
Imagine a person who has been searching for love for a decade. Consciously, that 5% of their brain wants love more than anything. But subconsciously, due to childhood abandonment or a string of terrible past rejections, they have a deep-seated belief. I am fundamentally unworthy of love, or everyone eventually leaves me.
The internal map is set.
Right. So this person finally meets someone amazing, they fall in love. The first few months are a complete fairy tale, but suddenly the dark clouds roll in. Being in a stable, loving relationship directly contradicts their subconscious belief that they are unlovable.
It creates that massive dissonance.
Exactly. So the brain's bouncer gets to work, the RAS starts filtering out all the kind, loving things their partner does, and it hyper-focuses on tiny flaws. The way the partner breathes while they sleep suddenly becomes enraging. A delayed text message is interpreted as a sign of impending betrayal.
It's sabotage.
Total sabotage. The person starts picking fights over nothing. They push and push and push until finally the exhausted partner packs their bags and leaves, and the person is left devastated, crying on the floor, thinking they just suffered a massive loss.
But according to the architecture of the mind we just outlined, they didn't lose. They won.
They executed a flawless, subconsciously engineered victory.
Precisely. The brain will not tolerate an external reality being loved that contradicts its foundational fact, I am unlovable. So it meticulously engineered the destruction of the relationship to prove the core belief correct. The person proved that people always leave. They validated their own tragic narrative. The subconscious mission was accomplished with absolute precision. They won.
Wow, we're literally addicted to our own misery because our misery validates our identity. We are winning at proving our own worst fears right. Bishop talks about how we win in different domains. Let's look at the financial domain. Say you make $40,000 a year, and no matter how hard you try, you can never seem to break through to a higher income level. You get a bonus, and your car immediately breaks down, costing exactly the amount of the bonus.
It feels like a curse, or just really bad luck.
But it's not. It's not necessarily because making $80,000 is physically twice as hard. It's because your subconscious identity is entirely tethered to the domain of the $40,000 a year struggle. You know how to be the person who clips coupons, who stresses about rent, who complains about the rich.
Just familiar territory.
Yeah. If you suddenly made $100,000, that identity would be destroyed. You wouldn't know who you were anymore. So your subconscious ensures you sabotage the promotion, or you subconsciously ignore investment opportunities to keep you safely in your familiar domain.
It is a twisted survival mechanism. The brain heavily prefers the familiar pain of a known past over the unpredictable, identity-threatening terrain of a successful future. To succeed in a massive, unprecedented way, you would have to prove your foundational beliefs wrong. And to your ego, to your subconscious persona, being proven wrong feels like a literal death threat. It would unsettle the very foundation of who you believe you are.
He mentions that another massive domain people win in is the blaming the parents domain. This is so common. We subconsciously sabotage our health, our careers, or our marriages simply to validate the narrative that our parents completely screwed us up.
Yes, I've seen that so often.
Because if we succeeded, we would have to admit that our parents' mistakes didn't ruin us. We would lose our ultimate scapegoat. So we fail just to prove they were terrible parents. We win the argument by ruining our own lives.
It's a tragic victory. But understanding this is the key to unlocking the cage. If we are locked in this 95% autopilot, blindly winning at domains that make us utterly miserable, how do we redirect the machinery?
Right, like how do we use I am wired to win to actually achieve the things our conscious mind wants?
First, you must drag the subconscious into the light. You have to identify the domain you are currently winning in. You must look at your chronic struggles, the repeated patterns of failure, with absolute objectivity and ask yourself, what hidden belief am I proving right here? Are you proving that you are a victim? Are you proving that you are unorganized? Once you expose the subconscious mission, it loses a massive amount of its power. You shine a light on the monster under the bed.
And once it's exposed,
Then you must actively, consciously redefine the game. You set new, conscious targets. If your old game was winning at proving I am a procrastinator, your new conscious target is winning at proving I am disciplined. You relentlessly take actions that contradict the old programming. You force the brain to gather new evidence. You take that unconquerable, flawless winning mechanism and you point it at a target that actually serves you.
but here is the practical reality. Rewiring deep, decades-old subconscious programming is incredibly difficult work. And it feels almost impossible when we are completely overwhelmed by the immediate screaming problems directly in our faces.
Of course.
The spilled coffee on our laptop, the flat tire on the way to work, the incredibly passive-aggressive email from our boss. To do the deep wiring work, we first have to figure out how to stop drowning in a puddle. We have to zoom way, way out and gain some perspective.
Which brings us to the next vital tool in Bishop's arsenal, encapsulated by the assertion, I got this.
I found this section to be incredibly grounding because it deals with how we allow small, localized problems to become totally toxic to our entire worldview. You lose your keys, you stub your toe, and you burn your breakfast.
Awesome.
Suddenly you're snapping at your kids, you decide you hate your career, and your internal narrative shifts to, my life is a complete disaster, the universe is against me.
Right.
The small problem acts like a drop of highly concentrated black dye in a glass of water. It instantly colors everything.
In cognitive behavioral therapy, this is known as a cognitive distortion, specifically overgeneralization or catastrophizing. We allow a localized, temporary negative experience to dictate our global perception of reality. The biological stress response, the cortisol and adrenaline dumped into our bloodstream over the burned toast tricks our brain into thinking our actual survival is threatened. We lose all rational perspective.
To combat this biological hijack, Bishop offers a beautiful, profound visualization exercise. He asks the reader to imagine their life as a long railroad track.
Let's guide the listener through that right now. Close your eyes, if you are in a place where you can, and picture it. You are standing in the middle of a vast set of railroad tracks.
Now look way down the tracks to your left. That direction represents your past. Look at all the ground you have already covered to get to this exact spot. You can see the greatest joys of your life back there. Your first real love, the day you graduated, holding your child for the first time, a perfect afternoon on a beach. But intertwined with those, you also see the worst pains imaginable.
The devastating breakups, the massive professional failures, the times you were lying in a hospital bed terrified, the moments of utter, crushing humiliation.
You felt all those terrible emotions back then with the exact same intensity you feel your current problems? When you got that terrible grade in high school, or when you were rejected by your first crush, you genuinely thought your life was over. You thought the pain would never end.
But look at where you are standing now. You survived. You made it through every single one of those seemingly insurmountable, world-ending obstacles to arrive at the present moment. Your track record for surviving bad days is literally 100%.
Looking at the tracks in this way is a profound form of cognitive restructuring. I like to think of it as curing our historical amnesia. We constantly forget our own resilience. When you visually lay out the sheer volume of impossible things you have already navigated, it dramatically shrinks the size of today's crisis.
It really does.
The passive-aggressive email from your boss or the flat tire doesn't derail the train. It just becomes another passing scene out the window.
Bishop anchors this thought process with a fantastic quote from Socrates. He said, "If all our misfortunes were laid in one common heap, whence everyone must take an equal portion, most people would be content to take their own and depart."
That is such a powerful perspective shift. When you truly step back and survey the entirety of human suffering, grief, war, famine, or even just the entirety of your own past resilience, you quickly realize that you are fully equipped right now to handle whatever mundane frustration is in front of you. Hence the assertion, I got this.
Right.
It isn't a magical spell that magically inflates the flat tire, but it grounds you in the undeniable historical fact of your own competence.
And the visualization doesn't end there. After looking to the left, Bishop has us turn and look down the tracks to the right.
Down the future tracks, you see unvisited places, people you haven't met yet, new relationships, future successes, and laughter. And ultimately, way down at the very end of the line, death. The tracks stop.
Staring at that endpoint is a crucial philosophical exercise. Heidegger, the phenomenologist we hinted at earlier, wrote extensively about this. Facing the absolute certainty of our death puts the triviality of our current anxieties into stark relief.
But there is a massive catch here. While visualizing the general trajectory of the future tracks can give us perspective, trying to obsessively predict every single twist, turn, and bump of those future tracks is exactly what drives human beings completely insane.
And that leads us to the next profound assertion. I embrace the uncertainty.
This is perhaps the hardest assertion for modern people to swallow. We are culturally obsessed with prediction.
I will be the first to admit I am completely guilty of this. I want to know exactly how things are going to play out before I take a step. Will it rain on my vacation? Will I get the return on investment if I buy this equipment? Will this new relationship actually lead to marriage, or am I wasting my time? We crave a guarantee.
The need for a guarantee is deeply embedded in our evolutionary biology. If we look at the development of the human brain, specifically the amygdala, the fear center, we understand why. Okay, tell me more about that.
For hundreds of thousands of years of human history, during the Pleistocene era, uncertainty literally equated to death. Stepping into an unknown cave meant getting eaten by a predator. Eating an unfamiliar berry meant poisoning yourself. Venturing away from the predictable safety of the tribe meant freezing to death. Our brains evolved to crave certainty as a biological survival imperative. To the primitive brain, safety is predictability.
But here's the problem. In the modern world, the stakes are completely different, but our biological hardware hasn't updated. Asking your boss for a raise, or launching a podcast, or asking someone out on a date is not going to result in a saber-toothed tiger jumping out of the bushes to maul you.
No, you will not die.
But our amygdala still fires off the exact same primal fear response. We treat social, romantic, or professional uncertainty like a literal life or death threat.
We allow ancient survival software to dictate modern self-actualization. But I anticipate a genuine pushback here, one that many analytical thinkers will raise.
Yeah, I have a major issue with this. If I just embrace uncertainty and stop planning, I'm going to go broke. I'll miss my mortgage payments. Isn't having a solid financial plan the responsible thing to do? We are taught by every financial advisor to plan for retirement, buy insurance, secure our futures. Isn't Bishop basically advocating for recklessness?
That is the common misconception. Bishop is not saying you shouldn't have a plan. Planning is a highly functional executive behavior. The poison isn't the plan. The poison is your attachment to the certainty of the plan.
Ah, the attachment.
Yes, you can plan for retirement, but if you demand an absolute guarantee that the stock market won't crash, you will live in a state of constant agonizing anxiety. The philosophical reality, and this goes back to Socrates again, who famously said, all I know is that I know nothing, is that the universe is inherently chaotic. You could do everything perfectly right, save all your money, eat perfectly healthy, and still get hit by a bus tomorrow, or a global pandemic could wipe out your industry.
Which we all know happens.
Exactly. Certainty is a complete manufactured fantasy. When we run from uncertainty, we are rejecting the only guaranteed reality of the universe in favor of a comforting lie.
And beyond just causing us baseline anxiety, this addiction to certainty is the ultimate assassin of human potential. Bishop points out a profound truth. Success never comes to people who wait until they are completely certain they will succeed. It comes to the people who feel the doubt, who feel the biological terror of the unknown, and who step into the void despite it.
We call this the comfort zone trap. When we strictly adhere to what is certain, we are essentially living in the past. We are endlessly repeating routines that were once risky but have now been mastered and rendered safe. But nothing new can ever be born in the comfort zone. Growth, opportunity, financial fortune, and deep love. These things exclusively live in the realm of the uncertain.
He makes a brilliant observation about highly successful people. Many people who achieve great things eventually hit a massive plateau and lose their edge. Why? Because they trade their initial risk-taking ambition for the comfort of their newfound wealth and security.
They get comfortable.
They finally achieve a level of certainty, a nice house, a stable income, and they become terrified of losing it. So they stop taking risks, they start stepping into the unknown. And the moment they do that, they stop growing.
To reach your true potential, you must be willing to be judged. You must be willing to look foolish. You must be willing to invest time and money into a project that might fail spectacularly. You must step off the ledge without knowing exactly where your foot will land.
Okay, so if we truly embrace uncertainty, it means we have to take action even when we feel terrified or intensely doubtful or completely unmotivated. And this realization shatters one of the most massive, universally accepted myths in the entire self-help industry. Which brings us to the next assertion: I am not my thoughts. I am what I do.
This is where Bishop takes a sledgehammer to the foundation of the positive vibes only movement.
It's my favorite part of the book. He recounts sitting on his couch in his sweatpants, scrolling through Facebook, and he sees an image of a beautiful sunset with one of those classic syrupy quotes plastered over it: change your thoughts, change your life. And he just calls it out as a complete, utter pile of nonsense.
It is a profound critique because that quote relies on a deeply flawed premise.
Yeah.
It assumes that your internal state must dictate your external reality.
Exactly. He argues that there is a massive yawning gap between how we feel inside and what we are capable of doing outside. Think about how we live our lives. We all sit around waiting for the perfect mood to strike before we do anything difficult.
Like?
We wait for a burst of energetic inspiration before we put on our running shoes. We wait for a feeling of supreme, unshakable confidence before we make a hard sales call.
We treat motivation like it's the weather. We look out the window of our mind, and if it's raining negative thoughts, we decide we can't go outside and work. But if you study truly great performers, elite athletes, historical innovators, prolific writers, you discover a secret. They do not magically lack negative thoughts.
No, they don't.
They suffer from imposter syndrome, crushing fear, and physical exhaustion, just like the rest of us.
The difference is that they have learned to sever the chain between their thoughts and their actions. They act completely independently of their internal condition.
Bishop paints a picture of this paralysis that is so painfully relatable.
Oh, the cubicle scenario. Let me set the scene, because everyone has lived this. You are stuck in your cubicle. You have a massive career-defining project due at 5 p.m. You look at the clock, it's 10:34 a.m. You feel a wave of lethargy. You think, I'm just not feeling it today. I need to get my energy right.
We've all been there.
So you open a new browser tab to look for inspiration. Suddenly, you're looking at a review for a new pair of hover shoes. Oh, I definitely need those.
Yeah.
Then you remember you can't afford them, so you check your bank account. Seeing your credit card debt sends you into a panic. To soothe the panic, you check a dating app, get no matches, and spiral into an existential dread that you will die alone in an apartment full of cats.
It's a complete spiral.
Someone walks by your cubicle, so you aggressively mash your keyboard and furrow your brow to look busy. You look at the clock again. It's 11:13 a.m. You've done absolutely zero work, but you have successfully bathed your brain in negative thoughts for 40 minutes, all while waiting for motivation to arrive.
It is a tragedy masquerading as a comedy. But there is a mechanical, biological way to break that cycle, and it goes all the way back to the philosopher Aristotle. Aristotle famously said, we become just by performing just actions, temperate by performing temperate actions, brave by performing brave actions.
The Aristotle loop.
Yes. The sequence is vital. You do not wait to feel brave in order to do the brave thing. You do the brave thing, and the physical act itself generates the feeling of bravery.
Let's explain the biology behind why this works, because it's not just philosophy, it's physiology. When you are sitting in the cubicle, panicking, your amygdala, the emotional center, is hogging all the blood flow and electrical energy in your brain. You are stuck in a thought loop. But taking physical action, even just typing the first dreadful sentence of the report or putting on your running shoes and walking out the door, engages your somatic nervous system and your motor cortex.
Exactly. You literally force the blood flow out of the emotional center and into the executive and motor centers of the brain. Action starves the fear center of energy. Doing the task actually changes the chemical composition of your brain, which in turn changes your thoughts.
It's like sitting in a parked car, turning the steering wheel as hard as you can, and getting mad that the car isn't turning. You can't steer a parked car. The thoughts are the steering wheel, but action is pressing the gas pedal. You have to move forward before you can change direction. Action is the quickest, most ruthless way to change your internal state. When you fully engage in an activity, you enter a state of flow, and the internal freak show goes completely silent.
So the quote on the Facebook sunset has it completely backward. Change your thoughts, change your life is a recipe for paralysis. The reality is, change your actions, change your thoughts, change your life.
Your negative thoughts only have power over you if you permit them to dictate your physical behavior. If you feel like absolute garbage, you think you are a failure, you want to cry, but you go to the gym and lift the weights anyway, you are what you do. You are a person who goes to the gym. The thoughts are irrelevant.
However, we must acknowledge that taking action when your internal fuel gauge of motivation reads 0 requires a very specific, rare kind of mental endurance. It requires an engine that runs on something other than feeling good. And that brings us to the next assertion. I am relentless.
Relentlessness. This is about establishing residency outside your comfort zone. Because, as we established with uncertainty, our biggest successes are exclusively born out of discomfort and risk.
Relentlessness is a fascinating psychological construct. Motivation is easy when you're seeing results. If you diet for a week and lose 5 pounds, you are highly motivated to keep dieting. But relentlessness is what you must rely on when all hope, all motivation, and all visible evidence of success have completely vanished. It is the absolute stubborn refusal to accept the consensus of impossibility.
Bishop uses the Wright brothers as a prime example. They had zero historical precedent for human flight. The smartest scientists in the world at the time had mathematically proven that heavier-than-air flight was impossible. If the Wright brothers had listened to the consensus, if they had waited for validation, they would have stayed on the ground making bicycles in Ohio. But they refused to accept the thought that it was impossible.
As Bishop notes, an opinion only becomes true when you accept it and stop acting on your potential. The Wright brothers were relentless in the face of universal doubt.
But the ultimate example Bishop uses to illustrate the anatomy of relentlessness is Arnold Schwarzenegger.
It is a brilliant case study. Let's look at the sheer statistical absurdity of Arnold's life.
He was born in a tiny rural farming village in post-World War II Austria, a place completely devastated by the war. And this young kid decides his life goal is to move to America, become the greatest bodybuilder in history, and then become a Hollywood movie star.
We have to remember the context of the era, too. This was decades before the internet. Most households in his village probably didn't even have a television. America was a fantastical, mythical concept. The idea that a farm boy with a massive, unpronounceable last name and a thick, guttural accent would become the highest-paid action star in the world and eventually the governor of California was objectively delusional.
Every single rational adult around him must have told him he was crazy. They probably told him to be realistic, to get a job at the local factory. But he never agreed with them. He was relentlessly focused. And the strategy he used is what I find so applicable. Arnold didn't walk into a gym on day one and try to lift the entire building. He didn't try to manifest an entire Mr. Olympia physique in an afternoon. He focused his relentless energy on one incredibly small, manageable thing at a time.
He isolated his focus.
Yes. Today we work the biceps. Just the biceps. Tomorrow, the shoulders. The next day, the glutes. Moment by moment, rep by rep, ounce of muscle by ounce of muscle. He completely ignored the massive, overwhelming distance between where he was and where he wanted to be, and he just lifted the weight in his hands.
It is the ultimate strategy for navigating the great unknown. When you are blazing a trail through a dense jungle, you don't have a map. You don't know if you are 3 days from the edge of the jungle or 30 minutes.
Staring into the endless trees will paralyze you with despair. So how do you apply this one muscle at a time focus? You deal only with the obstacle directly in front of your face.
You don't worry about the 10 miles left to walk. You focus your absolute undivided attention on the very next step. If there is a wall of vines in your way, you don't worry about what's behind the wall. You just swing the machete until there is a hole. You put one foot in front of the other. When you are lost in the dark, the only valid direction is forward. That is the true anatomy of relentlessness. Just keep swinging. However, human nature dictates that as we relentlessly pursue these massive goals, we inevitably set invisible traps for ourselves. We put in the reps, we swing the machete, and we become deeply emotionally attached to exactly how and when our goals should manifest. We draw up a blueprint in our minds, and when the chaotic universe fails to match our blueprint, we suffer a total collapse.
Boom. Devastation. Which brings us to the most subtle yet incredibly destructive force Bishop identifies, the sabotage of hidden expectations.
The assertion here is a paradox that is very difficult to master. I expect nothing and accept everything.
Let me set up Bishop's illustrative example for this, because I think Anyone who has ever tried to start a complex project, plan a wedding, or launch a business will feel this deep in their bones. You have a dream of starting your own retail business. You are relentless. You do everything right. You spend months scouting locations. You negotiate a tough lease. You hire an expensive accountant. You buy the perfect aesthetic furniture. You hire a great staff. You are 3 days away from your grand opening. You can taste the success. And then you get an email. Your main product supplier has fallen through. They back out of the deal completely.
A critical logistical failure.
Suddenly, you are plunged into an abyss of despair. You are frantically making calls, looking for new suppliers, but the prices are astronomically high. You start second-guessing every decision you ever made. You think, I am an idiot. I should have seen this coming. This entire business was a mistake. I'm going to lose my life savings. I should just go beg for my old, miserable job back. You are completely paralyzed by the misery of the moment.
Now, if we connect this back to the ontological framework we discussed at the beginning, how we experience our reality, what is actually causing that intense, debilitating despair? It is not just the logistical problem of losing the supplier. A lost supplier is just a math problem to solve. The devastating pain is caused by the hidden expectation you harbored that the process was supposed to go smoothly.
Bishop calls this the expectation gap.
Yes. Your feelings of powerlessness, anger, and upset are perfectly mathematically correlated to the gap between your hidden expectations and your actual reality. You built a rigid mental template of how starting this business would unfold. You expected the supplier to deliver on time. When the chaotic reality of the world shattered that template, you didn't just lose a supplier, you lost your psychological footing.
We do this constantly in our personal relationships, too. We expect our partners to be able to read our minds, to anticipate our needs without us asking, to always be in a perfectly supportive mood. And when they act like flawed, unpredictable human beings, we feel deeply slighted. We get furious. But we aren't actually mad at them. We are mad that they violated the invisible script we wrote for them in our heads.
Exactly. Expectations are massive leaks in our energetic reserves. They divert our power. Instead of dealing with the actual tangible problem, which is simply finding a new supplier or communicating clearly with our partner, we waste massive amounts of emotional energy mourning the death of our expectation. We throw an internal tantrum because the universe refuses to conform to our fantasy.
So Bishop's solution is the assertion, I expect nothing and accept everything. But I have to challenge this, because to the average person, accepting everything sounds exactly like giving up. It sounds like being a passive doormat. If my boss is verbally abusive and I just accept everything, doesn't that mean I just sit there and take the abuse?
That is the most common and most dangerous misconception of this philosophy. Acceptance in this specific ontological context is a posture of supreme power, not weakness. Accepting everything does not mean you condone bad behavior. It does not mean you won't take fierce, decisive action to change a toxic situation.
Okay, so what does it mean?
It means you acknowledge the reality of the situation exactly as it is right now without throwing a psychological hissy fit that it shouldn't be happening. If your boss is abusive, acceptance means saying, my boss is abusive, that is the current reality. You drop the resistance to what is. You stop wasting energy wishing he was a better person. Once you accept the reality, you are operating from a grounded place, and you can take the necessary action like reporting into HR or aggressively looking for a new job.
It's like being in a rowboat. If you suddenly fall out of the rowboat into the freezing water, you don't stay submerged in the water, continuing to mimic the rowing motion with your arms, screaming in anger that the boat isn't under you anymore. That's clinging to an expectation, and you will drown. The game has changed. Acceptance means acknowledging that you are in the water, the boat is gone, and you immediately start swimming for the shore.
A perfect analogy. You align yourself with the present reality. Bishop quotes the ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man." Life is a constant churning state of flux. It's fundamentally unpredictable. When you drop your rigid, fragile expectations, you stop trying to force life to march to your precise, predetermined beat. You realize life is a complex dance. You listen to the music, and you respond to the rhythm as it plays.
You plan for victory, you work relentlessly for it, but you don't expect it to look a certain way. You execute the plan, and you fluidly deal with whatever chaotic variable the universe throws at you. It frees up so much mental bandwidth. But as Bishop points out with legal precision in his final chapter, knowing all this high-level urban philosophy is completely and utterly useless unless we actually get off the couch and apply it in the real world.
Which brings us to the ultimate crescendo of the book,
Yeah.
mortality and action.
The final chapter is titled, Where Next? And it tackles a very real, very insidious danger for people who listen to deep dives like this one or who read a lot of self-help books. He calls it becoming a personal development drone.
It is a trap of intellectual consumption. The personal development drone is the person who consumes endless amounts of philosophy, psychology, and productivity hacks. They know all the theories, they can quote stoicism, but their actual physical life never changes. They use the consumption of knowledge as a substitute for action. They are perpetually waiting for the perfect mindset, the perfect level of certainty, to finally make a move. But, as we've exhaustively discussed, the future is not the answer to your present.
To violently shake us out of this paralysis, Bishop goes straight for the jugular. He bypasses the brain and aims for our most primal fear. He uses our own mortality.
He channels the philosophy of Martin Heidegger here. Heidegger believed that human beings spend most of their lives in an inauthentic state. We do what society expects, we follow the herd, we distract ourselves with trivialities. Heidegger argued that we only truly become free to be our authentic selves when we squarely, unflinchingly face the absolute certainty of our own death. Bishop takes this philosophical concept and turns it into a haunting visualization exercise.
Yeah, he forces you to imagine your own deathbed. Imagine you are lying in a sterile hospital room. The monitor is steadily beeping next to your head. You can feel your physical energy draining away. You have mere hours left to live. And as you lie there staring at the ceiling, you look back at the whole scope of your life, and the crushing realization hits you. You never made the change.
You stayed in the job that slowly killed your spirit. You stayed in the unfulfilling, cold relationship because you were afraid of being alone. You never started the business. You never wrote the book. You never got healthy. You read all the books, made the vision boards, you psyched yourself up, but you never actually did it.
The wave of regret in that final moment would be absolute agony. It is the ultimate ultimatum. And the crucial observation Bishop makes here is about the nature of regret. Future you, lying on that hospital bed, will not regret failing to make $10 million. Future you will not regret that your startup went bankrupt or that the novel you wrote got rejected by publishers. Future you will regret not trying. Future you will mourn the fact that you played it safe, hid from uncertainty, and lived a cowardly lie.
The pain of failure is temporary. The pain of regret is terminal. So how do we avoid that tragic fate? Bishop outlines a painfully simple, brutally honest two-step formula to break out of the drone state and claim your freedom.
Okay, lay out the 2 steps for us.
Step 1, stop doing what you are currently doing. You must stop the bad stuff.
Stop the 4-hour Netflix binges every night. Stop eating the junk food that makes you lethargic. Stop the endless, mind-numbing scrolling on social media. Stop making sophisticated excuses for your unwillingness.
Exactly. If you claim you want to build a better life, but you spend your evenings passively consuming entertainment, you are lying to yourself. Your actions are your truth. You have to stop honoring your own excuses. You must ruthlessly clear out the behaviors that are anchoring you to mediocrity because they are consuming the time and energy you need to escape.
And step 2.
Start taking the actions to propel you forward. You cannot just stop the bad habits and leave a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum. You have to actively replace the bad habits with new, uncomfortable actions to build a physical case for your new life. Map out the very next step, not the whole staircase, just the next step, and hold yourself accountable. Stop thinking about it, stop planning it, and go do it.
Wow. We have covered an incredible sweeping amount of ground today. We started by confronting the exhausting freak show of our 50,000 daily thoughts, learning that we can literally rewire our brain's hardware by intervening with assertive language, staking our claim in the present with "I am," rather than delaying our lives with "I will." We crossed the difficult threshold of willingness, taking 100% ownership of the aftermath of our circumstances and permanently ending the blame game.
We explored the mind-bending biological reality that we are always winning, exposing how our subconscious meticulously engineers our failures to validate our deepest fears and how to redirect that targeting system. We learned to zoom out, using cognitive restructuring to put our daily crises in perspective against the vast railroad tracks of our past survival and our inevitable death.
We shattered the dangerous illusion of certainty, realizing that evolutionary biology tricks us into fearing the unknown, even though the unknown is the only place growth can occur. We dismantled the toxic myth of positive thinking, understanding through the Aristotle loop that we are what we do, not what we think. We embrace the relentless muscle-by-muscle grind of action, and we learn to drop our heavy, hidden expectations so we can accept reality as a fluid dance, not a rigid march. And we did all of this because the clock of our mortality is ticking louder every second.
It is a profound, unified framework for action. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over. Building on Bishop's central idea that your future is not the answer to your present, consider this. How much of your identity right now is tied up in the act of waiting for your life to officially start? We are always waiting. We wait for the bad mood to pass. We wait for the money to arrive. We wait for the perfect relationship to materialize. We wait for certainty to solidify under our feet. But what if the obstacles, the bad moods, the heartbreaks, and the terrifying uncertainties aren't annoying interruptions delaying your real life? What if they are your life? And the only question that matters is whether you will finally drop the excuses and choose to participate in it today.
That is a chilling and beautiful thought to end on. That is exactly what we are all about here at the Book Nook. We want to help you stop waiting and start participating. Thank you so much for joining us for this extensive exploration into Gary John Bishop's incredible book. If you found value in this conversation, please subscribe to the Book Nook so you never miss an episode. We are building a community of people dedicated to genuine, no BS growth, and we want you with us.
The journey continues.
And we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us which book you'd like us to explore next. We read every single one.